Morning, everyone. Welcome to the CI Chit Chat. Happy Memorial Day. Hope you had a great weekend. It was a good time at my place with our three little kids now. If you are new to the Chit Chat, we're talking carbon intensity. And on the farm, we think of it as essentially our carbon footprint per bushel or per unit of outcome. Because on the farm, our carbon footprint or our sustainability data, really, we are part of the supply chain, and what happens on our farm, our footprint, is part of the footprint of the supply chain that we're playing into and the products that are created utilizing our commodities. In particular, talking about corn and soybeans and their role in the footprint of biofuels. And that's a big deal because of the 45Z tax credit, which has been in law for 3.5 years. Was first put into law with the Inflation Reduction Act and then expanded with the Big Beautiful Bill. We're still waiting for some final rules, but coming extremely soon. And that's really the big message of the day. Multiple things that are kind of coming to a head in Washington, D.C. this week, and hopefully some additional clarity in all this extremely soon. So, number one, let's talk about the overall rule. So remember, it's a tax credit. So 45Z plays under the Department of Treasury, under the IRS, because it's tax credits, tax law, and they are rolling out this program in the tax code. So the IRS sets the rules. They wrote the rule and published it back in February. So the rule is live. It is there. It's 172 pages long, and one page of it says farmers and feedstock will be included, but there'll be an updated calculator and some updated rules. So the IRS, though, they clarified a bunch of the other components for the biofuel producers to utilize at their facilities. Things like, how do you actually file for these credits, and how do you account for Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon reductions, which is what is happening at the facility. And you can lower that with things like carbon capture, the pipelines, those kind of things. And you can lower your carbon footprint from your energy by utilizing more renewable energy. And currently you can actually purchase renewable energy credits, or RECs, to offset that footprint. So very similar to what we were pushing for feedstock to be included via a book and claim accounting system. Renewable energy is already accounted for under a book and claim system, because that energy, of course, goes into the grid. It's blended with all the other energy, so there's not that segmentation of the energy. So they decouple the certificates off of it, just like what we're working on with the crop. But anyway, so the IRS wrote that rule back in February. All kinds of clarity of stuff. They started a public comment period, which ended in April. And back in February, they said that there's going to be a public hearing to hear verbal comments from the public. That public hearing at that point was set for May 28th. And just in the last couple of weeks, they actually have expanded the public hearing, that it's taking place all day May 27th, all day May 28th, and the morning of May 29th. So it starts tomorrow, goes through midday Friday. It's going to be a long couple days of public hearing. I need to get the call-in info shared for folks that want to listen in. But lot of folks that will be sharing comments. There's about 70 companies or so that applied for and were selected to provide comments, and Continuum is one of those. And I'll be giving comments on Thursday, like late Thursday morning. So anyway, so IRS is taking public comment, hearing what people have to say for feedback and suggestions and whatnot. And our message will be shared on Friday. As we look through the list of companies providing testimony, a lot of friendlies on there. We think it's going to be overwhelming message of promoting the farmer inclusion and advocating for that, with the majority of those folks advocating for farmers to be included via a book and claim approach. So I think there'll be a lot of common message, but our message remains very similar to what it's been. Make sure that there's a feedstock calculator that adequately rewards the farmer behaviors, meaning adequately gives points for the various practices like using cover crops, using manure, reducing tillage, better optimizing fertilizer. We've seen in the past feedstock calculators, like for other programs, we've seen previous calculators that don't give enough points for the practices and therefore don't create enough financial value, and therefore wouldn't really get people excited to actually change practices or participate in the program. So we got to make sure that the calculator is good and adequately rewards the farming practices. The current Department of Energy calculator would do that. It was just updated and published in December. I am hearing reports that the updated USDA calculator is going to be pretty good as well. And I sure hope that is accurate. I just haven't ever seen it yet, so I don't know for certain because it's still, it's still in the final stages of development. But anyway, so be advocating for a good calculator, book and claim, a variety of other smaller things as well. So, so that hearing will take place here this week. The other major thing that's happening is that the USDA has their final rule in the final stages of review with the Office of Management and Budget at the White House. And so you may remember that the USDA put out a rule about quantifying the carbon intensity of biofuel feedstocks at the end of the Biden administration back in January of 2025. So USDA wrote a rule about quantifying and verifying feedstock CI back in January of 2025. Now, the Trump USDA has taken that rule and has updated it, going from a preliminary rule to a final rule. It was submitted to the reviewers on April 2nd, and it is in the final stages of that review process, and then it'll be going live. I don't know if that'll be... I was really hoping that it was going to be last Friday. A lot of signs were pointing towards that. However, it was at the end of the week before last, because I think they have to give a 1 week lead time. But there was an additional meeting. They're called the EO 12866 meetings. So the week before last, there was an additional one of those meetings put on the schedule, put on the Federal Register. And so that meeting will be taking place here yet today. Actually, it's scheduled for 2:00 today. So there's one last review meeting going on here today. I'm looking at the website right now. They've got the rest of the stuff updated, and there was just a meeting late last week as well, and it shows that is being complete. And now one last meeting that is scheduled. So hopefully we get this thing done and across the finish line, and then this rule can go live here very soon. So monitoring that very closely, and we should have this updated USDA rule, which again is where we clarify book and claim versus mass balance, updated feedstock calculator, updated audit protocols and whatnot. Feel pretty good that it's going to be what we want, but we got to get through the last steps. So don't know when it'll happen, but if they've got their last meeting today, maybe they can finish up some of their stuff this week, send it back over to the USDA, and then they can get it published, hopefully this week or next or sometime soon. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the final steps here take too long. At least, I don't have a ton of experience monitoring these, but we've seen it a handful of times now, and it always takes longer than what we want. But once the review ends, seems like then the next steps of pushing it live can happen pretty quick, but don't know. So But anyway, that's kind of the updates. So IRS public hearing this week, USDA rule in the final stages, and as soon as it goes live, we'll let y'all know and circle the wagons here and have an emergency press conference to push that out. And then other things, of course, Topsoil Summit coming up June 10th. Obviously, there could be a lot of details and particulars that need to be addressed at that. So really the key spot to come and mingle with, between farmers, ag folks, biofuel folks, getting them all together in one room. It's a room that is not happening. It's a conversation that's not happening anywhere else. So we're excited to host it again and get you all the latest and greatest when it comes to these programs and opportunities for the farm, opportunities for farmers and the industry to collaborate together and tap into some new opportunity. Thanks, Diana. There's the link to get registered. You need to get registered by next week, June 3rd. And so go ahead and get that done. And come on down to Southeast Iowa and come to the event. I think that is it for now. So we'll see what happens with with this rule getting pushed out live. See what happens with the IRS here this week. I don't think the IRS is going to act very quickly, too, for another point of clarity. So they'll do their public hearing. Then they have to consider all of those comments and stuff as they are working on drafting up their final rule. So I assume that that's going to be a multi-month process yet for the IRS to go from their preliminary rule to a final rule. And the key is, for the farm is going to be getting the USDA rule live, and then we can really dig deep in evaluating it to then put together a strategy about how do we push on the IRS and the Department of Energy to include these components from the USDA, or do we want to see some adjustments made? Because ultimately, it's the Department of Treasury, again, the IRS, gets to finalize, however they want to go about this program. They get the final say-so. So, but anyway, it's going to be a process here, but looking good and should get some clarity, at least for the farmer component of all this, get some clarity here soon. So that's what we got. And as soon as we know more, we'll let y'all know. And we will see you back here on the Chit Chat next week. And go ahead and get registered for the Topsoil Summit. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.